Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to Operation Freedom Briefing, combined with Dave versus the MSM. Information the bought-off lamestream fake media will never present or never touch. Thanks for joining me today. Hey, look, we are also available on Sundays for a live 3-hour radio show that I've been doing for 14 and a half years. Time flies. Out of Wham Talk 1600's Freedom Bunker. And you can stream it live, free, every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern. Just hit the listen live button at davejanda.com. Now, if you want the commercial-free podcast, they are also available as part of our premium service content and email alert service. I send out email alerts about issues to get folks ahead of the curve on our subscriber base. 30 cents a day, $9 a month, biggest bang for the buck in all the internet. But we also have our premium service content where I do videos and presentations that I cannot discuss on the radio. Not because of Wham Talk 1600. It's the only radio station in the country that does not have a general manager telling you what you can and can't say, or ownership. Anything goes. The problem is above that, the FCC. So we have to be careful on a number of issues. I also can't speak about issues on social media platforms because then Dave gets taken down. So that's why the subscription service, which is a censorship-free, suppression-free zone, is there for you. We hope you'll join us. You know, it's interesting what gets me blowback. On a recent radio show, I was speaking about how we're at a point in our history as it relates to our constitutional republic of a now or never aspect. That this is a now or never time in our constitutional republic's history. That much like in the 1770s. Because if we don't step up and if we don't do this right, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and for generations to come will not have one semblance of freedom, which is so critical for all of us to be engaged, peacefully, patriotically, but engaged. So a lot of folks got down on me for saying, you know, it's now or never. Well, I'm not really can understand why, but it did. It elicited this, and maybe it's because I'm based in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, but we have listeners in all 50 states and in over 100 countries of folks that listen through the internet of our show, either live or download the podcast. So, and I started, when I was talking about this now or never side, which to me is just, it is now or never. I mean, I don't think it's a shade of gray. I think it's pretty black and white. Elon Musk recently said, "This is our one and only chance to restore democracy from the dictatorship of the bureaucracy. It is now or never, and it must be now." I look, love or hate Elon Musk, I completely agree with him. It is now or never. And the cult wants us back on the couch. They got pretty mad, obviously, that things didn't go their way, where they could jury-rig things enough where they could steal yet another election in November 2024. So they're mad. And they don't like some of the things that are happening. Most of the things that are happening. And that's good. And what they really don't like is their money laundering operation, and their fraud machine is being outed through the dogistas, and not just outed, but taken down. And that is critical in our it's now or never approach. It is now. We're never going to have a better opportunity to take down the syndicate, the whatever you want to call it, globalist syndicate, globalist cult, New World Order crowd, criminal international banking syndicate, shadow government, deep state, it's all the same. Musk again. They are hiding massive fraud and don't want their grift to end. Think Ukraine. This is how we know we are over the target. Everything Doge does is published for the world to see at doge.gov. Let the public judge for themselves. And see, accountability, transparency. cult despises those two entities because it leads to their implosion, to their downfall. Which is why it actually is, it's a pretty simple game plan that our side, the freedom side, has. Push accountability and push transparency. And frankly, if there are people that have said they're part of the freedom movement, that when transparency occurs, it appears, wait a minute, they were controlled opposition and actually doing things for the other side. Okay, let the chips fall where they may. They need to go down too. But their money laundering operation is what keeps the cult, quote, in business. And this is why Musk and President Trump, all the Dogeistas, all of us assisting Doge, get so much heat and so much blowback. Edward Dowd, a financial analyst, recently said the revelations since the new Trump administration 2.0 took power have confirmed what many of us suspected, that the Democrat globalists, the rhino globalists, bureaucrats, and NGO, non-government organization networks, have systematically pilfered the treasury for decades while setting up retribution for those who had noticed and hit those who had and targeted those who had noticed with censorship, lawfare, weaponization of government and intel agencies, and executing psyops. In fact, when we look economically, a significant portion of our GDP is in fact fraud. But normies, the zealots in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, and probably about 90% of your family that still listen to the bought-off lamestream fake media, maybe I'm being kind. Maybe it's 95% of your family, 99% of your family, friends, neighbors, coworkers. They're normies. That's the nice way of saying they're ignorant to what's really going on. They're ignorant to the reality of the situation. Yeah. It's frustrating, isn't it? Yeah. Normies are still clueless how deep the rot goes. I think that's true. And the rot is incredibly, as it says, deep, as in the deep state. And when you push against the cult and you end their money laundering operation, which has benefited them to the tune of trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars over the years, they push back. They more than push back. Musk was recently on Joe Rogan's show. Quote, "This is really going to get me assassinated," and quote, Musk issues a warning over exposing D.C. corruption. Now, I can tell you that is in fact true, and it's not just Musk. All of us in the independent media that are not controlled or have any semblance of being controlled opposition are continually threatened. It's the truth. That's not an overstatement. It's not hyperbole. It's the truth. We are targeted on many different planes. During a recent experience on the Rogan show, Elon Musk suggested that he'll be assassinated if he goes too deep into the corruption in D.C. Quote, "It's more than just insider trading. The stock portfolio stuff is quite trackable, but it's a lot more than insider trading." Now, let me tell you what he's alluding to. On March 19, 2017, General Tom McInerney, with the assistance of Admiral Ace Lyons, came on my radio show live and spoke about how entities within the United States government at the time. So who was president at the time? March 19, 2017. Oh, that would be Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Comey at the FBI and Brennan at the director of the CIA and Clapper, the director of national intelligence, Susan Rice. Hillary Clinton was wandering around there too. She had kind of moved to other pastures, but she was still hanging out. They were involved in commandeering an intelligence platform that was used to watch terrorists called the Hammer. And I've done many, many videos on this. On the bottom of our YouTube channel, in fact, there's a area about illegal surveillance of all the videos. If you haven't watched them, you should, because this is going to come full circle, because this is what Musk is talking about here. And they outlined that they commandeered this platform. Obama, Biden, Brennan, Clapper. Mueller was in there too, former director of the FBI at the time, but Comey, Susan Rice, Hillary. And they used it to illegally surveil, spy, on Donald Trump and General Flynn and thousands of others that were in the freedom movement. But in addition, they could use that platform to, I use this term loosely, hack into not just communications, but use it to hack into, I'm just using that term because it's easier than talking about throwing platforms and the like, into businesses and get some inside information. And then benefit from that knowledge of what they're seeing internally. And do you think Obama has all these mansions because he had big book sales? Come on. This is about money laundering. So listen to what Musk said. Quote, remember, you start talking about Hammer, you start talking about the illegal surveillance platforms that they were using for industrial espionage, and I can tell you this for fact, they come after you. Oh boy, do they. This is what they don't want exposed to the nth degree. Listen to what he said. It's more than just insider trading. The stock portfolio stuff is trackable, but it's a lot more than insider trading. Ding, ding, ding. He's telling you this. What we were talking about on March 19th, 2017 on our radio show. Quote, listen to what he says next. It's about the way they're acquiring wealth. And what methods, Rogan? What methods are you talking about? Quote, I mean, this is really going to get me assassinated. It's like I'm not lengthening my lifespan by explaining this stuff, to say the least. I mean, I was supposed to go back to D.C. How am I going to survive? This is effing going to kill me for sure. In fact, I do think like this. It's like I actually have to be careful that I don't push too hard on the corruption stuff because it's going to get me killed, end quote. And that's not an overstatement. People get upset about it's now or never. Well, yeah. And yes, this is not hyperbole. I can tell you. They send their puppets that are former intelligence of people. They're never former. Once CIA, always CIA. Nobody leaves the mafia alive. Nobody leaves the intelligence agencies alive. Well, I'm a whistleblower. Stop. So, the public-facing threats that people face, and just look at Musk, are these performative art protests where they're bussing in the protesters, right? And what are they protesting, by the way? They're protesting the exposure of criminal fraud and abuse within the government and their subsidiaries through the NGOs, non-government organizations. These protesters are protesting the exposure of government abuse. They're protesting the exposure of corrupt non-government organizations that are money laundering operations for the government and their puppets in the bankster community. And they're exposing the expulsion of illegal criminal terrorists. That's what they're protesting. In public. but in private. And this is true. Their threats, as bad as they are about burning Tesla dealerships down and burning charging stations down and all that, which are awful and are terrorist acts in and of themselves. And frankly, I think the prosecutions to date have been too tame for those terrorists. And but behind the curtain, behind the closed doors, the threats are far more sinister because their money laundering operation is coming to an end, and they're desperate and they're panicked. And that's a good thing that they're desperate and panicked, as long as we take the appropriate precautions. James Howard Kunstler, great political writer. Do you see how all this works now? The ever-expanding matrix of non-government organizations creates an army of useful idiots working hand in hand with an ever-expanding rogue bureaucracy that has become effectively a fourth branch of government accountable to nobody. This is how your tax dollars disappear down a rat hole and why the U.S. government is insolvent. Yeah. See, and what they really are bent out of shape about is Doge exposing this fraud and abuse, which is why they pay these, quote, protesters, pay them, bust them in, and just look at the geofence data put out by Tony Saruga, who does a great job. It's all, you can't even call it AstroTurf protests, right? It's just all, it's all show. It's all performative art. Elon Musk has figured out the Soros Racket. Now remember, Soros is not the top of the pyramid. Too many people think that. He's an upper middle, boy, his people hate this when I say this. I always get nasty grams from them when I say this. But I love saying it because it's true. George Soros is not the top of the pyramid, right? He's an upper middle level puppet of the syndicate, right? The top level, let's do this again because this also pisses them off and it causes some blowback my way, but good. It means I'm getting to them. So, the upper level management, the families, the bankster families, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Lazards, Pinkuses, Warburgs, Seifs, Loebs, and the very top, the Payseur, Payseur. I haven't heard of them, Dave. Why? Exactly. They don't want you to know about them. Look it up. Do a little search. Elon Musk has figured out the Soros Racket. It doesn't involve Soros spending his own money. It involves Soros making a seed investment so we can get his hands on our money, taxpayer money. He then makes us pay through the government to fund our own destruction. Musk, quote, George Soros is a system hacker. He is a genius in a sinister way, arbitrageur. He figures out that you could leverage a small amount of money to create a nonprofit, then lobby politicians, own them, to send a ton of money to that nonprofit from taxpayers, so you can then take what might be a $10 million donation in setting up the nonprofit and paying off these, kind word, whores in Congress, and leverage it into getting an NGO built up to $1 billion, all with taxpayer money. Then the government continues to fund it every year and will have a nice sounding name like the Institute for Peace. But really, it's a grafting machine. Right. And it's a grafting machine that occurs domestically through these NGOs, but it also occurs internationally. Just think of Ukraine as an example. This is from Mark Tapscott from the Epoch Times. USAID, always, whenever you hear that, well, you're not going to hear that much anymore because it's pretty well getting disbanded, but I've told people for over 14 years on the radio, when you hear USAID, here's what you think. CIA. Yeah, front. USAID sent millions to Ukraine in secret slush funds, investigators have now found. That's really no new news to any of us from this channel, right? I've told you about this. long before the Russia-Ukraine war started. U.S. Agency for International Development officials repeatedly refused to allow investigators working for Senate Doge Caucus Chairman Senator Joni Ernst to examine documents related to U.S. tax dollars allegedly intended to help Ukraine combat the Russian invasion. During their investigation, the sleuths found millions of dollars of USAID programs and secret slush funds being used to funnel millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars into Ukraine for questionable purposes unrelated to our national interests. Well, like what? Okay, how about this? Funds allegedly intended to alleviate economic distress in Ukraine was spent on the following. How about this? Ready? Better sit down if you're not. You paid for this. You and I paid for this. Sending Ukrainian models and designers on junkets to New York City, to London Fashion Week, to Paris Fashion Week, and South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. Among the secret... I wonder if Zelensky's wife was on that. Yeah, probably. He might have been too. Among the secret slush funds was one providing $114,000 to fund purchases of premium limited edition furniture lines. Another $91,000 was used to finance a trade mission for a Scandinavian-style furniture line. Oh, wow. Other USAID funding uncovered by the investigators included $148,000 for a pickle maker, $255,000 U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund a producer of organic tea and coffee, $104,000 for an artisan fruit tea company, and $89,000 to support a Ukrainian vineyard. USAID U.S. taxpayer money funding also provided $300,000 to a dog collar manufacturer, $161,000 to a owner-operator of contemporary knitwear, and $126,000 for a photographer for fashion design publications, and $84,000 to support a luxury bridal brand. Yeah. And the question is, did they really see all that money? Or was that just funneled into politicians' pockets in Ukraine and then got funneled back into the United States, to these cats sitting in Congress? And the question is, well, how can they do all this stuff? Well, how about this to just end this particular segment? Musk, feds have magic money computers that issue payments out of thin air with no documentation that what the expense went for. Musk was being interviewed. So I call it magic money computers. Any computer that can make money out of thin air. That's magic money. So how does that work? Musk. Well, it just issues payments. And an interviewer said, well, wait, there are like 11 of these at Treasury? And they're sending out trillions, with a T, dollars of payments every year? Well, Musk, they're mostly at the Department of Treasury, but there are others that are being used in the Department of Health and Human Services as well as the Department of Defense. In fact, we found 14 magic money computers that just send money out of nothing. So they say we're $36 trillion in debt, and then if you add the unfunded liabilities and mandates, a couple $100 trillion. Sounds like we're a lot more than that. If you have magic money computers that are just printing out and sending it out, we got a problem, Houston. We knew we had a problem before, but we got a problem. And the way we end this problem is with the philosophy of now or never, not going to the couch, educating and empowering many people is what's really going on. Because frankly, even out here in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, when I talk about this waste and corruption, there's two responses I get in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. Okay, also known as Moscow on the Huron River. Okay? Huron River goes right through the middle of Ann Arbor. Okay. When I start talking about this, they either run inside, right, their igloo or their hut or whatever the heck they live in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. They either run in back into their house or they go, "Can you prove that? Do you have information that you can get me?" Yeah. Yeah, I do. That's why I carry this little card with websites where they can go to get information. And I'll tell you, they turn ashen white when they realize, wait a minute. I have actually had people, when I explain the situation, the ones that don't run inside, that have had, and they continually in Ann Arbor, they continue, if you ever come here, it's a nice place, but they have lawn signs that are always supporting globalist causes or globalist puppets, right? Long after an election's over, like years after an election's over. They're just... So I have had occasion when I do this that they actually go to the lawn sign that has some globalist puppet's name on it. And when I tell them that they've been involved in this, and they've actually, and they've been out there so long that, in the snow and in the rain over many, many, sometimes years, I have had occasion where they actually go, and when I explain this and give them information, they actually go and they pick the lawn sign up out of their yard and go put it in their garage. But the majority of them, they don't do that. They run back in the igloo. So, the bottom line, folks, is the key is education. The key is information. Facts, data, when needed, science. And even those that go running back into their igloo, you've planted a seed. Because when they run back in their igloo, if they are connected to the internet, there's a little bit, if not a higher probability than little bit, that they actually go on and start doing a little search. And I know they're using search engines that are garbage. But even that, mark my words, don't sit on the couch. It is now or never. But this is a battle we can and we will win. Because here's the bottom line. You and I are relentless. It's that simple. We are relentless in bringing information and making it so that all these children and our children's children have a freedom-based society to live in and flourish in. I thank you for joining me today. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com. Become a member of our freedom family. What's holding you back? You can sign up for a month, and then it renews every month. And if you don't like it, you can get rid of it. But why? We're giving you information that puts you months, years ahead of the curve, protects you. Join us. Become a member of our freedom family. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.